It's based on knowing the world, really knowing it very well, being very grounded, very lucid, and yet deciding to choose life and be hopeful and believe in yourself and believe in other people and believe in the world and believe in love.
This video was made possible through the kind support of my sponsors over at Patreon. Patreon is a great way to help independent creators like myself produce original content. If you'd like to get more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much.
Each month of the Hebrew calendar has its own flavor, its own scent. And the flavor of Elul, the aroma of Elul, is obviously all about tshuva. Return, repentance, coming back to God, coming back to Hashem, coming back to ourselves. And it's the last month of the yearly calendar, and we're starting to approach Rosh Hashanah, the new year. So it's an ending, but we are nearing a beginning, so it's a time of finishing and wanting to find a way to somehow convert the energy of ending and summing up and looking back, to convert this energy into energy of looking ahead and making new decisions and coming into the new year uplifted and hopeful and hoping that the mistakes of last year, we won't repeat them, that we'll learn our lessons, that we'll be able to renew ourselves, to rejuvenate in some way. And the main image I want to focus on today, or the main concept, whoever met me at shul yesterday in the Chabad shul, that it was like basically a teaser for this class. I want to talk about the notion of tmimut. It's actually a very difficult concept to translate into English. There are several translations. One is innocence, one is wholeheartedness, because tamim is also shalim. One is earnestness. That's how it was in Yiddish. In Yiddish, they call tmimut ernstkeit, earnestness. And if it's a negative kind of tmimut, we usually call it naivety or naivete. But in Hebrew, it's just one word, tmimut. And we want to get a bit of an understanding of what the proper kind of tmimut is. Because if you think about it, we said it's the end of the year, and so looking back at the year that we had, then the feeling is that maybe we started the year being very tmimim, very innocent, very hopeful, everything was pristine, everything was still open. And we all remember last Elul we were in a different universe. We had no idea what was ahead of us. And we were very tmimim about this new year, what's going to happen in this year. But now, looking back, we don't feel so tmimim. We don't feel so innocent. We don't feel so hopeful. We know how this year turned out to be. We know what a terrible year it was. We know the terrible tragedies that befell us and the catastrophe and the war that's been going on. So how can we now go into a new year and regain that hopefulness? We see all the time throughout life, we start out with dreams and hopes, and everything seems so simple and pure, and then it's broken. And when things are broken, you feel that they can never be the same again. Even if you mend them, you see the cracks, and it wasn't what you were hoping for. So coming into Elul, we have this feeling of, we know how this year turned out to be. How can we once again raise our eyes towards the new year and the new beginning? And knowing what we know now, how can we be so hopeful? So this combination of the end and the beginning, of being hopeful and optimistic and tamim, and having this brokenness, carrying this brokenness with us, and this disillusionment, it's a difficult trick. It's a difficult, like walking a tightrope, like a balancing act. That's very, very difficult. And that's what we want to talk about. So really, this is the heart of Elul, is I think this topic. And we can see it in two Hebrew words that perfectly reflect this. So the first word is the star sign, the astrological sign of Elul. So we're not astrologers, and we're anti-astrology as a predictive system. because we're against divination. We just read about this in this week's Parsha, is that it's forbidden to be me'onen. One of the explanations for me'onen is to make predictions based on onnot, that is seasons or times or months. So the astrology of the newspaper, that's absolutely forbidden because it's based on this month, this is going to happen to you, this is not going to happen to you. However, when you look at the actual sign, the star sign, all the zodiac signs, then they do mean something. And Avraham Avinu was first an astrologer before opening up to faith in God and in God that's above the mazalot, in mazal Yisrael. But he was able to incorporate the zodiac signs and their meanings into the book of formation that he wrote, Sefer Yetzirah, thereby sanctifying all the symbols that we know that are associated with the months. So this gave a kosher stamp for the zodiac symbols, and the star sign or the zodiac sign of Elul is Virgo. Virgo is virgin. Virgin is all about innocence. It's all about wholeness. It's all about being young, a maiden who hasn't yet been known by another person, and she's still young, she's still innocent. And this is so weird that this is the star sign of the last month of the year. It would make sense for that to be maybe for Tishrei, or maybe for Nisan, because we have two beginnings to the yearly cycle. It could be Tishrei, but it's neither Tishrei nor Nisan. It's Elul. So the last month is all about being innocent, being virgin-like, being pristine, being everything is new, nothing is, you're untainted in any way, you're untouched. So how does this work? So there's a beautiful allusion in the actual word, the word in Hebrew for Virgo, betula. If you look at this word, you can cut it up into two words. The first two letters are simply bat. Bat is a daughter, a girl, a maiden. That in itself suggests this kind of virginity or virgin-like pureness or innocence. But then the last three letters, they don't make up a word, Vav Lamed Hey, but they do have a gematria. Their gematria is 41. And the simplest word you can get from 41 is Em, which is mother. So it turns out that the Hebrew word betula in itself carries opposites, and it tells you that when we're talking about mazal betula, the zodiac sign of betula, and betula being the image that is supposed to walk with us when thinking about Elul, then we understand it's not the simple kind of childish innocence that you may think about when you first hear the word betula or virgin. It's something else. It's both bat and em, a daughter and a mother, innocence and experience, somehow put together. And this is an image, if you know a little bit the Kabbalistic Sefirot, there are two main feminine Sefirot. One is Malchut, and she's more the daughter, Sefirah, and the other one is Binah. Binah Yetera Nitna Ba'isha, a woman who's granted with more Binah, more understanding. So this higher feminine aspect, that corresponds to Betula in this sense, that is both a girl and a mother. It's both innocence, childlike innocence, and someone who's experienced. Could be mother, could be grandmother, great-grandmother, it doesn't matter, because once you're a mother, then you moved into the realm of experience. So when we're talking about bat plus em, daughter plus mother, this is betula. So the innocence, the tmimut of Elul is a complex temimut. It's a layered temimut. It's a temimut of, yes, looking at the world like a child, retaining the child's perspective, that's hopeful, that's innocent, that's not jaded by the world, and yet also having the eyes of the elderly mother, the experienced mother. She knew a man and she gave birth and she had children, grandchildren, whatever it is. She's seen the world and she is jaded. But either one of them is a simple concept, but both of them together, that's a complex concept. And that's what we're aiming at here. We're trying to wrap our heads around this kind of complex innocence, mature innocence, a sober innocence, right? This will be our topic. So that's one word. I said two words. So the one word is the star sign, the mazal of Elul, that's betula, which really includes both concepts. Just opening up a parenthesis and possibly getting getting myself in trouble with especially the YouTube audience. But this concept, this word Betula in Hebrew, with its carrying of opposites of the bat and the em, the mother and the maiden, is, when you think about it, that's the root in holiness, in Torah, of a very famous concept in another big religion, the biggest religion in the world, of the Virgin Mother. The whole idea that they have, which they dress up in very figurative, concrete imagery of an actual woman who was impregnated as a virgin and all this, but this is a very, again, external projection of a very subtle spiritual concept that we have, that exists in the sphere of Binah, which is associated with the word Betula, which equals bat plus em, daughter plus mother, maiden plus experienced mother. So these two together, it's a very deep image. And in fact, all the archetypes that we see in the world, especially religions that stem from Judaism, stem from the Torah, then as much as that is, not for us, and we want to steer clear from them, we need to know that if you abstract them and you distill them, you get to an element that has its root in Kabbalistic terminology, but in Kabbalistic terminology it's far more subtle and abstract and deeper. And so putting that image, that very, we would call it idolatrous image, aside, because that's how we see the religion, but the actual concept is a very profound one, and it has to do with Elul. So all this is just one word. The second word is Elul itself. Elul, all the names of the months are not Hebrew names, they're Babylonian names. We adopted them, we sort of carried them with us during the Babylonian diaspora. We took up the Babylonian calendar and some of its elements, and some of it was the words of the months. That's why they're so weird. Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, it's not Hebrew. But the fact that the Chazal, the sages, they chose to adopt those words and not many other words, it's very, very particular words in Persian and in Greek that they chose and they put in the Talmud, those words have been sort of elevated and sanctified. And then we can start thinking about them and taking them apart and meditating upon them and so on. So Elul, as we all know, has been seen as the acronym of many, many different terms that we can see especially in the Tanakh. So the most famous is Ani ledodi vedodi, I am to my beloved is to me. Ish lere'eu matanot le'evyonim, giving presents to one another and to the poor on Purim, and so on. But there's a lesser known term that has been associated with Elul, and it comes from the Talmud. In the Talmud it says that in the Aron is the ark, the holy ark, there were luchot veshivrei luchot. That's what the Talmud says. It says that luchot veshivrei luchot hayu ba'aron. The ark contained the tablets, that is the second whole tablets, which were given on Yom Kippur, which is being led up to in Elul, right? Elul plus the 10 first days of Tishrei, that's the 40 days of the second time Moshe went up to Mount Sinai to receive the second tablets. So this is already associated with this time. So Elul, so the Talmud says that luchot, tablets, the second whole tablet, veshivrei luchot, and the shards, the broken shards of the first tablets, all these were contained in the ark. So if you put the ark at the beginning, because first you need the ark, and then you can put stuff inside, and you have the Aron, and then you have luchot, and then you have veshivrei luchot, then the acronym is Elul. So Elul is Aron, luchot, veshivrei luchot. And if you think about it, it's the exact same message. It's like two perspectives, or two, how do you call it, when you, like the X and Y coordinates, that point at the same concept. Which is that Elul is all about the second tablets, which are whole, and they have to do with wholeness and with optimism. However, they're the second tablets, they're not the first. So it's a mature kind of wholeness. It's a wholeness that comes after being broken, and you don't forget what was broken. You carry it with you. You don't bury it. You don't throw it away. You don't whatever. You take it with you. And these are the second two letters. So beautifully, the first two letters are the ark and the whole tablets, and that creates a holy name, a name of God, right? Kel. And then the second two letters have to do with the brokenness, which actually came before the wholeness. It was the first kind of innocence that was broken. So both these concepts that we have just from looking at the word Betula very closely, and looking at the word Elul very closely, using this, so we come up with the same idea, that the kind of wholeness, right, Tmimut is wholeness, the kind of wholeness that we want to have in our heads, walking into and living through Elul and getting ready for the new year and thinking about making New Year's resolutions and summing up what happened and making plans, the kind of wholeness we want to have in our heads is this complex kind of wholeness. And sometimes it can be called second innocence. Right? There's something, Tmimut Shniya, second innocence. The idea is very simple. The idea is that we're all born into a very simple kind of innocence. We're all born very innocent. And that kind of innocence is based on not knowing a lot of things. We don't know about the world. We think the world is very small. It's us and our parents and our friends. That's our whole universe. We know very little about the world. We haven't experienced usually terrible trauma or wars. We grow up in a little, sheltered in our little cocoon. And this inevitably breaks. The first innocence is based on ignorance, and you're born into it, you don't choose it, and it's very fragile, and it ultimately breaks. You're innocent about your parents. If your parents are perfect people, you grow up and you discover that they're human beings, flawed human beings. You trust your rabbi. You think you're a rabbi, maybe you gave it to your parents, but your rabbi, your teacher at school, they're perfect, they're amazing, until you realize they're not amazing also. And sometimes you learn it in a good way, in a hard way. You can learn it all kinds of ways. And then maybe you fall in love for the first time. And it's the first time you fall in love, so it's the most amazing thing, but then your heart gets broken, because that's what happens. And it has to do with the basic dynamic about life. Life is first tohu, right, chaos, and then tikkun, rectification. The first version of everything is a chaotic version of it. It's a first draft. And then it breaks. So the first tmimut, the first innocence is we can call it the chaotic. It doesn't feel chaotic. It feels very soft and very, you're wrapped in it and everything. But it's chaotic in Hebrew. The word tohu in Kabbalah, it's not with the chaotic. It's just that it's unstable and ultimately it breaks. So this is a tohu-like tmimut, and it breaks. And then you have a choice. You can either become very, very cynical, which means, okay, now I lost my innocence, and I'm disillusioned, I'm sober, and now I'm going to look at the world in a different way. And for many people, by the way, this also happens with their faith in God. They have a simple, childish faith in God, then it breaks, and then they say, okay, I'm done with Hashem, I don't want anything to do with him, or with his the people claiming to represent him, or with his Torah. I'm disillusioned. So that's the cynical path. Another path is to try and recreate the first kind of innocence. That's like taking the broken shards of the first tablets and sort of gluing them together in some way, and playing make-believe that they never broke. And you can do it on a whole society level. You can build a whole society that you try and shelter it from the world, and try to make everyone live in this first kind of innocence, not knowing anything about the world. There's also a third path, and the third path is the second innocence. It's not trying to glue back the first one because it was meant to be broken. And it's not about then giving up on innocence altogether and being, again, cynical, sober, disillusioned, jaded, and so on. It's this Aron Luchot v'Shivrei Luchot, the ark, the wholeness and the brokenness, the mother, the experienced mother, and the hopeful daughter put together. It's putting in the ark the wholeness and the brokenness. So it means you can also picture it. You can have glasses, and one of your lenses is broken, and if you close the other eye, you look only through that lens, you see a broken world because your lens is broken, and it's a real thing. It's not just an illusion. The world is broken, but you need that lens to see how broken it is. But you have another lens that's clear, or that's whole. But you can also imagine one is like dark and one is pink. So and you have both. It's not only pink and it's not only dark, and you're able to look at the world using both eyes, and to see everything about the world, to see reality with everything that's bad about it. Everything you realized about your parents and your rabbis and the history and the world and human beings and falling in love, and the feeling of falling in love. You're totally sober, totally sober, and yet you're also irrationally hopeful about the future, because the future is unwritten and nobody knows what it is, and nobody knows what's around the corner. And it's up to you to decide if it's going to be just like the past or better than the past. It could be worse, could be better, but since you don't know, it's up to you what to expect, what to look forward to, what to strive to make the world be like that. So it's the second innocence, the sober innocence. It's different from the first innocence in three ways. It's a second innocence, meaning it's more mature and sober, and it's not based on ignorance. It's based on knowing the world, really knowing it very well, being very grounded, very lucid, and yet deciding to choose life and be hopeful and believe in yourself and believe in other people and believe in the world and believe in love and believe in miracles can happen even if the chances appear slim and so on. So it's mature and sober. It's voluntary. That's the second difference, because the first innocence, you were born into it. You didn't choose it. It was based on ignorance. You came into the world having it, and then you lost it. This time, you choose willfully, consciously, soberly, to be and up to look at the glass is half full, and to believe that around the corner a better future awaits. No, again, nobody knows, but it's what you choose to believe. So you choose consciously, irrationally, but in a way very rationally, because again, nobody knows what the future is, to believe that there's more to life than this, that things can get better, that people are better than they appear to be, and so on. So first difference is that it's sober and mature. The second is that it's voluntary. You choose it. You're not born into it. And the third and most interesting one is that because of the first two characteristics, it's also immune to being broken. Why is it immune to being broken? The first innocence was fragile. The second innocence is immune to being broken. Why? Because it contains the brokenness already. Just like the immune system works. The immune system works that it encounters the foreign element and it incorporates it into the system, and then it's prepared. And then it knows how to deal with it. And this is the broken shards of the first tablets are in the ark. You don't forget all the bad things that happened and all the bad things that you're liable to do also. That's part of the innocence, is about yourself. You think you're perfect. You realize you're not. You fall. And then you have to pick yourself up and continue believing in yourself that you are able to do tshuva. Right? This can go in many, many different directions. So now, every person goes through this process because we're all born innocent. Our innocence is broken in different areas of life at some point or another, for some later, for some sooner, for some in one area it's later, in other areas it's earlier. And then it's up to us if we're going to figure out this formula of the second innocence or fall into the other two negative categories of being very, very cynical or trying to recreate the old innocence, which doesn't work. But in our generation, there's another element added to this. All of us, as a generation, whether kids or grown-ups, living post-20th century, and even more than that, let's call it the modern age, the modern turn of events after the Middle Ages, we are all past what has been called the age of innocence. Prior to modernity, with its scientific discoveries, with its discoveries of different civilizations around the world, with its horrible wars of the 20th century, prior to this, the world was, relatively speaking, more innocent. People very easily believed in miracles, in supernatural beings, in the world to come, in some mystical force that's behind everything, in their own inherited little culture, in their own island or their little civilization. They didn't know so much about the world. They didn't have the world at the palm of their hands like we do. Coming into the modern era, this global kind of innocence or generational innocence has been lost. It's impossible for us, growing up in the 21st century, to grow up like people did in the Middle Ages or in ancient history, because we just know too much. We know things that they had no idea. We know science. We all know a little bit of science, or more than a little bit. We all know about other cultures, and we all have the internet, and we can all see so many different things. So in a way, this dilemma of how can we regain, reclaim, reconstruct some innocence in our lives has become a much bigger issue for all of us, even adults who figure it out, how to do it on an individual level. We still all need to do this on a much bigger level. How can we believe in a soul knowing what we know about the brain? There's so much knowledge about the brain and about the neurochemistry of it and about the electrical charges and about the neurotransmitters and all this stuff. We know so much, and we have the scans, and much of it has been figured out. How can we believe in a soul when the brain has been sliced open and cut open, and the soul is nowhere to be found? It's trickier now. We need a kind of post-scientific, this is like a second innocence kind of connection to spirituality. How can we believe in human beings and in utopia, in the idea of redemption after 2 world wars and a third one looming ahead? How can we believe that the Torah was given to the Jewish people back then in the Sinai desert, knowing what we know today about so many different cultures and religions? It's much, much trickier when you have encyclopedias and Wikipedia and everything is open and you realize how small you are compared to the world and so many cultures. And this is all the confusion in the Jewish people, all the schism within the Jewish people today, between the right and the left and seculars and religious people. Ultimately, it goes back to the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, which was all about breaking free from the old kind of innocence into a modern kind of sort of what they call enlightened, disillusioned, knowledgeability about the world and all the questions that it brings. How can we regain, reconnect to emunah, to faith, to a connection with Hashem, post all this knowledge, with not lapsing back into the pre-modern kind of connection, which doesn't hold today. Doesn't hold. We can't, because it's different. We know too much that the previous generations didn't know. So all this was just the introduction. And now, it wasn't just an introduction. That was like the general idea for this class. But now, one of the things that is unique to the Chabad, let's call it the Chabad method of contemplation, is that after it presents a general concept or a general idea, it tries to break it down into parts and pieces. And this is called moving from Hidbonenut Klalit, general observation or contemplation, to Hidbonenut Pratit, a more particular kind of contemplation. So in the second half, what we want to do now, that's in many ways the main chiddush of this class, and the main thing, the main takeaways also for us to go with, is we want to go to 3 archetypal biblical characters, figures in our history, in the world history, in Jewish history. 3 figures who the thing they have in common, they're all in the Torah, they're all in Genesis, and they were all characterized as being tmimim, as being tamim or tam. That's a shorter version. It's just like Elul it starts with the El, Aron Luchot. Then the same goes for tamim. Tam, you can just say tam, like one of the sons of the Haggadah. So one of them was 2 of them were called tamim, and the third was called tam. But it's the same word, same idea. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Noach and Avraham and Yaakov. So I'm just going to read the verses to be precise. So with Noach it says, Ele toldot Noach ish tzadik tamim haya bedorotav, et ha'Elohim yitalech Noach. These are the history of the progeny of Noach. There are several ways to translate this. Noach was a righteous and tamim person in his generations. As famously, this is a caveat, that he was tamim in his generations, but maybe in other generations he wouldn't be considered so tamim. That tells us something, that tamimut also relative. Anyway, he's the first figure that we want to learn something from him about. We basically want to come to these 3 people and ask them to teach us something about tamimut. How did you manage it? When I said the kernel of what I said just now in shul yesterday, And I said about the Aron, Luchot, Shivrei Luchot, its complex kind of innocence. Then the rabbi, that he turned to me and he said, now you have to explain how to do it. And so I said, okay, this is what the class is going to be about. So we want to come to Noach and Avraham and Yaakov and ask them, how did you do this juggling? How did you do this balancing act? How did you be tamim and not tamim at the same time, right? Be very tamim, very innocent, but totally not naive in any way. Tell us about your second innocence, because all of them, it was second innocence. They were old when they were described. Actually, Yaakov was as relatively younger, but when he was growing up. So anyway, so let's go over them again. So Noach, he was described as tamim bedorotav in his generations. And then about Avraham, even before he was called Avraham, and he was still called Avram. And this goes to show you that it couldn't have been the first innocence. Vayi Avram ben 90 shana v'teisha shanim. Avram was 99 years old when he was called Tamim. So very, very clearly, we're not talking about a childish innocence here. Vayi Avram ben 90 shana v'teisha shanim. He was 99 years old. And then Vayera Hashem el Avram. God revealed himself to Avram. V'amar elav ani kel shakai. I am one of the names of God. Hithalech lefanai v'heyeh tamim. Walk before me and be tamim. About Noach, it was said that he walked with God. That was the end of the verse that was describing Noach. He walked with God and he was tamim, relatively speaking, for his generation. With Avraham, it's different. Avraham is, God tells him, walk before me. I want you to initiate, to lead. I will back you up. And now I want you in the future to strive towards this kind of tmimut, which is a little bit different. And finally, we have Yaakov. So Yaakov, when we're told that he is tam, it's not when he's a little kid, but not when he's 99. It's when he grows up. So usually it's explained when he's 13. Vayigdelu hane'arim, the boys, him and his twin brother Esav, grew up, matured. Ve'esav ish yodat tzayid ish sadeh. Esav turned out to be a man of hunting, a man of the field. Ve'Yaakov is described as ish tam yoshev ohalim, a man of innocence or earnestness or wholeheartedness, or however we translate it, and a dweller of tents. And usually it's explained that he would study Torah. Torah wasn't given yet, but we have this tradition that some sort of wisdom was already given to the patriarchs, and they could learn it in some way, and there was a lot of oral Torah that preceded the written Torah, and because we know that Noach had commandments already. So he would study Torah in the tent, and he was tam, and basically, which means he was very honest. He wasn't a cheater. Then he had to deal with cheaters later on. So now we want to basically come to these three forefathers, Noach, Avraham, and Yaakov. And again, all of them, their tmimut was of the second kind. It was a mature, sober tmimut, a tmimut of having the whole tablets and the broken tablets, of being like a child and also like an adult at the same time, looking at the world and seeing it for what it is, very soberly, and also being extremely faithful, hopeful, and whole in their approach to life. But it was a different kind of tmimut. So now the tmimut is going to sort of break up into three elements, and we want to have them teach us something for our generation. What we can learn from them for our generation. Okay, so we're starting with Noach. Noach saw humankind deteriorate horribly, and all the way to blurring the lines between human and animal. Because that's what happened before the deluge, before the flood. Before the flood, we're 10 generations into the history of mankind, and it's been a very fast deterioration. And basically it's a descent into barbarism very early on. Because the human beings, they have an animal soul, they have a higher spiritual or intellectual or divine soul, and then not always the higher soul wins. And when the lower one wins, and we can deteriorate into barbarism. And this is really evident in the world today. that we can actually see it in Europe. Europe, that was the epitome of highest civilization, highest culture. In the 20th century, the country was considered the most advanced in terms of science and mathematics and philosophy, gave in to horrible barbarism, which somehow went together with being very cold and calculated and organized. And now another thing is happening, which is they opened their doors to so many immigrants who are bringing in a kind of unimagined, previously unimagined, a primitive behavior into Europe, and with violence breaking out in the streets and all kinds of terrible things. And so we are reminded, and of course what we had on October 7th, we are reminded in all kinds of ways that if you thought barbarism was behind you, was behind us, think again. We can see that it can come back at all times. And Noah saw this. And Adam, the Arishon, 10 generations earlier, would speak to God and would live in the Garden of Eden, but then 10 generations afterwards, it's a barbaric world. And the lines between the human and the animal are being blurred. And that's why the animals had to be killed also, but the species would be preserved, at least those species who didn't sin and all this. So obviously, going through all this, Noah was not at all tamim or innocent in some regular way. He saw the humanity deteriorating, and he saw the worst punishment we can imagine in the world of all of humanity being wiped clean and started anew. So what was his tmimut? How did it come across? How did it come about? So basically, he had faith in basic humanity. The fact that he embodied starting afresh with mankind, building an ark. In Hebrew, the word ark is teiva. Teiva is also word. So the image of an ark floating, we have the ark of the covenant, but now we have the ark also of, in Hebrew it's actually two different words, but in English comes the same word. But the teiva, the ark of Noah, in Hebrew the teiva. Teiva is also a word, a linguistic word. A word floating over the waters of the passions and the energy and the emotions. It's like civilization surviving the barbarism. That's what it is. Like the flood is a direct result of the sins of mankind. It was basically, they created the flood. The flood was just a reflection of a world of desires that are absolutely unbridled. And then that creates the flood. And then if you're able to build like a library, like a world of words and wisdom and thoughts and ideas, and you're able to float above. And that, when Noah embodied this, he embodied the belief in mankind, in humankind. So Noah, he embodies the wholehearted faith in restoring basic humanity. That he saw all the cruelty and all the evil of the world, and he saw the fact that we can descend and regress into barbarism, and yet he didn't lose faith that human beings can change. We were told about Noah that he was a man of little faith. Noach mi katnei emunah haya. That he was a person of little faith. Why were we told this? Because he didn't believe that the deluge was coming, the flood was coming, until he felt the first drop. He was on the outside, and only when the first drop fell did he finally accept that God is actually doing the flood that he promised to do. So he's called a person of little faith. But this little faith is really a lot of faith in human beings.
Yeah, optimistic.
That's what it means. It means that he was absolutely sure people will repent and will redeem their ways. And he couldn't believe that the flood is actually going to take place and that God is actually going to do this, because he was absolutely sure the people will listen and change their ways. So the fact that he had little faith in God meant that he had a lot of faith in human beings. So from Noah we learn one basic way, very much relevant for us in living in our generation and seeing where the world is heading today, to not let the world break our faith in humanity. In the fact that human beings can and will once again regain their sort of tselem Elokim. In a way, what he's bringing back into the world is the name Elokim. The name Elokim, the basic name of God. The name has to do with Tselem Elokim, us being created in the image of God, which is also the image of man. The image of man, the fact that we can be humans and not animals. And he had this faith. The Berdichever Rebbe, he also gave another beautiful interpretation for Noach and his little faith. He said he had little faith in himself. He didn't believe that he was the only righteous one around. So until the last moment, he looked around to see if maybe there's another one building an ark, or another one, God chose him to also join him in the ark. He couldn't believe that he was the only person who merits to stay alive. He had little faith in God, he had little faith in himself as an individual, and he had a lot of faith in humankind. In humankind as a species. He was absolutely sure there has to be more people, if not everyone, who will be able to repent and correct their ways, and either the flood would be cancelled, or they would be joining them on his ark, or something of that nature. So that's the first lesson we have from Noach. Confronted with barbarism, we have to continue believing in human beings, humankind, in the goodness of people, and the fact that humanity can be redeemed. Right? So that's the first thing. Avraham, it's a different story. Avraham, it's a different kind of innocence that was broken, and a different kind of innocence that was regained. Avraham lived post-flood and post the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was very different from the time of the flood. The flood was barbaric, uncivilized, and people were being reduced to their most base instincts and desires and so on. The building of the Tower of Babel required cooperation, language, technology, science. Society was much more cohesive. They worked together, but they worked together to create a world that doesn't have divine intervention in it. They didn't want to believe that there is an almighty God that's running the world. They believed in the laws of nature. One of the most beautiful explanations for why they built the Tower of Babel is that they said to themselves, the flood happened in the year 1676 from the creation of the world. And it was a one-time event. But then they said, no, it can't be a one-time event because there's no such a thing as miracles. So, conclusion, every 1676 years, every 1676 years, there's a flood. So we have to get ready for the next one. Which is just like today, people are being told, the world, if you go down to the most fundamental physics, laws of physics, it's fine-tuned to the umpteenth degree to create life. If gravity was a little bit stronger, a little bit weaker, if the electromagnetic force was a little bit stronger, a little bit weaker, then the universe wouldn't have survived, wouldn't have lasted, and wouldn't have maintained life. The world, you forget evolution. Evolution maybe explained away the complexity, the biological complexity. But now you have complexity on the level of physics. And it's unbelievable. It's fine-tuned. From the first instant of the Big Bang, it was fine-tuned to sustain life. So what are people saying? Oh, there must be a multiverse, and we just happen to be on the one universe that sustains life, and the other universe just didn't make it. So we're on like a physics kind of evolution idea, and no evidence for this infinite amount of universes. But it's I call it the will to disbelieve. If you don't want to believe that there's a creator, you'll do everything in your power to disbelieve that there's a creator. And that was the generation of Avraham. So in a way, he was living in the similar generation that we're living to, in the sense of having a kind of scientific worldview that encompasses, purports to encompass everything, but pushes away a creator, and especially a creator that intervenes with the world. So coming out of the Tower of Babel, and this society that is basically saying that celebrates humanity and the advantage of humans to animals. We are rational beings. We have science. We have technology. It celebrates it. It's the opposite of what happened before Noach. But now that becomes the problem. The problem is that we believe too much in mankind. But before the flood, it was believing too little in mankind. Now we believe too much in mankind, and so we think that the man is king, and God is out of the picture. And Avraham himself, in the beginning, was like this because he was an astrologer. And as an astrologer, he believed that the laws of nature, you can see them in the stars, in the movement of the stars, and that was the science of his day. And that was the whole picture. And that's why he believed that he and his wife will never have children, because he saw in the stars that Avram and Sarai are barren and will forever remain barren. And then God reveals himself to him. And the God of a transcendent God, not an immanent God. Basically, it was coming from Shem Elokim to Shem Havaya, God's proper higher name that's above the laws of nature. And then he realized that there is something superior to nature, the laws of nature. In our generation, that means that we know everything we know about the brain, we know everything we know about the laws of nature, and it appears ridiculous to believe in miracles, and to believe in higher worlds, and to believe in the world to come, and to believe in the soul and in free choice. But we just have to remember, and this is the lesson we learned from Abraham, that science only describes the visible world, the world of phenomenon and regularities, but it doesn't account for everything that you don't see and the irregular phenomena of basically the hidden world bursting into the revealed world. And realizing that you have all back then it was the astrological system, and then realizing God told Abraham, come out of your astrology, come out of your belief in this system that explains everything. I am higher than the stars. He took him outside of the world. He looked at the stars from above, and he showed them that there's another force at play, and I can change your names, change your destiny. And same goes for our generation. Science, we don't have to throw away science. Throwing science, being anti-science, that's like gluing the old charts together and trying to regain the old innocence. Science is wonderful. Science is the best way to explain the physical world. But science is limited. Science only explores the regular happenings of nature, but not the special one-time events in which we get a glimpse of levels of reality, spiritual levels of reality that are coming into play in this world, which are really sort of glimmers of Shem Havaya, like God's face shining in through the cracks of physical reality. So for us today, it's having a post-scientific faith, a faith that basically says science is wonderful, but science only paints half the picture, the lower half of the picture, the physical half of the picture. It's the best way to describe the physical world, but the physical world is not everything there is. There's more behind it. The riddle of consciousness, the miracle of consciousness is still a miracle, and it's still a wonder, and it's like a porthole into a universe of spiritual experiences and spiritual realms that consciousness is privy to, that the brain is it's just like a computer console that you plug into something much, much more magnificent, which is the spiritual world. So the lesson from Abraham, the lesson from Noah was having faith in mankind, and the lesson from Abraham is having faith in God and spirituality that's above mankind, above the physical world, and bringing back into the world. We need both of them in our generation. So if we have Noah that gave us the faith in man, and we have Abraham that gave us faith in God, which is also Shem Elokim, Tzelem Elokim, and Shem Havaya, the higher name of God, the personal name of God that's intervening with the world, what is left for Yaakov to give us? So Yaakov is the person who connects the two. Yaakov is the person who felt divine providence leading him, accompanying him in every moment, every step, more than any other figure. Maybe the only other person to compete is Yosef, his son, which is in a way a continuation of him. But the first person to have this experience and in two places he expresses this very beautifully. One is after he has the dream of the ladder, which by the way is also about unifying these two movements. So the angels going up the ladder, that's like Noah's faith in mankind being able to rise above the physical nature and reconnect to its tselem, to the image of God it was created from. And the angels descending the ladder, that's like God intervening in the world, sending angels into the world to visit us and to give us wisdom, to give us light. It's him basically descending into the world. And he saw the ladder with both movements. And then he wakes up and he says, he makes a vow, and he says, "Im hiye Elokim imadi ushmarani b'derech hazeh, asher anochi olech v'natan li lechem le'chol u'beged lilbosh." And if God will guard me on this way upon which I am going, He will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear. He's going to take care of my every need. He's going to walk with me. V'shavti b'shalom el bet avi v'haya Hashem li le'elokim. I shall return in peace to my father's house, and the Lord will be my God. The Lord will be my God is Hashem. Havaya will be my Elokim. So he really makes this connection in such a beautiful way. The personal God is not just a God who's created the world, an intervening world, the world, and answering our prayers. He's actually going to come down and be my personal God, accompanying me, walking with me every step of the way. So Yaakov is restoring our faith in divine providence, in hashgacha pratit, in a particular kind of guidance and observation of God observing us and walking with us in every step. The second time he describes this is much later, when he is in Egypt and he meets his two grandchildren, the two sons of Yosef, and he blesses them. And then he says, he's the first person to say this, he describes God as his shepherd. We know this from David, but it comes from Yaakov first. He says, my forefathers, Avraham and Yitzchak, they walked before him. That's another new term, walking before God. Well, Avraham was decreed to do this, but now we have him actually describing this happening, walking before God. And then he says, Elokim haro'eh oti, that shepherded me, that sustained me ever since ever since I was born to this day. Every day I felt God's presence. He was in a world of people who cheat, of people who lie, of a brother was trying to kill him. He was in a world of uncertainties. He walked into the unknown. He came back into the unknown. He thought he lost his son. He regained his son. He had a very difficult life. But he needed, that's exactly why he needed, because he lived in a world of uncertainty. So he needed to feel God's presence, God holding his hand, walking with him every step of the way. This is something unique, special to Yaakov. This is the innocence, the tmimut of Yaakov, and what he can give us. So from Noach we get restored faith in mankind, which we sorely need today, which is restoring the name of Elokim into our life. And from Avraham we can learn how to rekindle faith in God and spirituality in a materialistic, technological world that seems very cynical and seems to make fun of all these childish beliefs that there's a God watching above us and listening to our prayers and caring about us and intervening on our behalf and changing history and doing this miraculous event. Avraham went through this, and we can be inspired by him. And finally, from Yaakov, we can restore our faith in divine providence, restore our tmimut in divine providence in a world of uncertainties. Because if one thing we learned from this year is, we learned all of this, but one major thing we learned is that we have no idea what's lying ahead. We have no idea what's lying ahead. Every day is surprises, every week is surprises, everything is uncertain. We don't know if we can fly to another country, if we can't fly. We don't know if there's going to be a war, it's not going to be a war, where is it going to get to? Who will live and who will die? We're going to say this in Yom Kippur. Who by fire, who by water? So we desperately need also the tmimut of Yaakov to teach us how to feel, to connect to this feeling that God is our shepherd and our sustainer, and walking with us every step of the way, showing us the way and accompanying us, and again doing this in a very mature way, a very sober way, not turning a blind eye to all the harsh aspects of reality, to all the problems of reality. And with the uncertainty, you hold God's hand, and He holds your hand, and He can walk us through this wilderness that we're on. So may we really connect to this. There's a verse in the beginning of Deuteronomy that says, "Veshavta." It says, when you have a time of distress, at the end of days, all the different problems that the Torah warns us that may happen, "Veshavta ad Havaya Elokecha. You should return to the Lord your God, but in Chassidut this is read as you need to return to God to the degree that the name Havaya, the personal aspect of God that Abraham discovered, you can feel that it is your Elokim. It touches, it penetrates, it filters down until the most, until your own Tzelem Elokim, your own personal life. And this is the combination that Yaakov gave us. So it all has to do with tshuva, which is the main thing to focus on in Elul. So Be'ezrat Hashem, may we regain all these types of tmimut, of innocence, and walk with God and before God, and make it through the upcoming turbulence.
Hi everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please press like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. If you want more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.